I don't have any money to give you anymore? Shut up. I deserve to receive it. Our grandmother quietly said, "Do as you please," and hung up the phone. At that moment, our grandmother was angrier than I had ever seen her, her forehead furrowed with wrinkles. My name is Daisy. Currently, I live in a house in the countryside, a bit away from the city center, with my sister Noelle and my grandparents. My brother Bart lives in New York, and we recently received news that he is getting married. Ever since we were young, Bart has been causing problems, and I saw our deceased parents struggle because of him. Neither Noelle nor I suffered direct violence, but we had our small allowances stolen, our belongings hidden, and were lied to, leaving us with nothing but bad memories. In other words, I have almost no good memories with my brother. In his senior year of high school, as he was preparing for university entrance exams, Bart expressed a desire to go to a university in New York and live alone there. Our parents were worried about him living alone, especially moving to New York, and were opposed to it. However, our parents passed away around that time, and Bart, having been accepted into a university in New York, moved there without a chance to grieve. My sister and I were left in our grandparents' care, and although my brother ended up living alone in New York, honestly, we felt a sense of relief to be away from him. The home of our grandparents, who run a small business, has their office on the first floor, and we live on the second floor. Our pragmatic grandparents raised us with love, and although we couldn't live a luxurious life, we never struggled. Later, my grandmother mentioned that my brother had graduated from university and found a job, but I haven't heard the details. Initially, my grandparents kept in touch with him frequently, but as time passed, they rarely contacted him unless there was something important. More often, even when we reached out, there was no reply from my brother, and he never once came back to our grandparents' house during breaks from university, such as during the summer holidays. About 10 years have passed since then, and now both my sister and I are working as adults, and my brother must be around 30 years old. While living in New York, my brother found a girlfriend and seems to be getting married soon. Though he hasn't visited since he moved to New York, he will return home for a visit to introduce his fiancée. But since we haven't had any contact since elementary school, it feels like meeting a distant relative. When I heard that my brother was getting married under such circumstances, I felt no emotion. A week later, my brother came back with his fiancée. "Hey, doesn't his girlfriend look really flashy?" Noelle whispered. Indeed, the woman my brother brought was decked out in jangly accessories and wore quite heavy makeup. I wonder if this was the type he liked. I don't know. Uninterested in my brother's preferences, I responded nonchalantly, "Nice to meet you. I'm Holly, and I've been dating Bart." Despite her out-of-place attire, Holly greeted us politely. I had initially judged her negatively simply because she was my brother's girlfriend, but I reconsidered, thinking she might actually be a nice person. "Thank you for having us. We'll be taking our leave now. We live in the countryside, but please feel free to visit us again." I was worried because it's Bart, but I feel relieved seeing he's with someone like you, Holly. Daisy, please drive them to the station with Noelle. Our grandparents really liked Holly and were pleased throughout. We got into the car to drive my brother and Holly to the station. As soon as we left the driveway, my brother, who had hardly spoken all day, suddenly started talking. "Hey, have you guys got boyfriends yet?" Unfortunately, neither Noelle nor I currently have boyfriends. "No, but is there a problem with that?" When I answered, my brother laughed mockingly. "Haha, just as I thought. It's impossible for plain girls like you living in the countryside to have boyfriends." He insulted us, and Noelle and I exchanged looks. His lack of compassion hadn't changed even after 10 years. "Don't talk like that. It's cruel to them." I thought someone was reprimanding him, but that wasn't the case. Holly joined him in mocking us and continued, "Your brother set up his own company without anyone's help. You, still dependent on your grandparents and not standing on your own, couldn't possibly understand how impressive he is. Any good impression I had was quickly gone. This might be Holly's true nature. You think I'm flashy, right? But you know, this ring, these necklaces, and the wristwatch were all bought by Bart with the money he earned through hard work. Unlike you, who have everything handed to you, there's a difference between you and Bart. She tapped her head with her finger, as if to point out that she was smarter. I was stunned by Holly's condescending tone. I had never heard before that my brother was running a company. However, comparing our lives, having been living comfortably under our grandparents' care, to my brother who moved to New York on his own, she might be right. That's the thing. Unlike you, who were raised in a greenhouse, I climbed up here on my own strength. If anything happens to Grandpa's company, leave it to me. You wouldn't understand how to manage it, would you? I'm kind enough to let you live in the attic, he said. Aha! Holly laughed loudly, as if she agreed with him. The car was completely dominated by their pace, and the discomfort was indescribable. The station began to appear faintly in the distance. The brief 10-minute ride felt incredibly long. Just make sure you take care of the old folks until they drop dead, he said as we parked the car. I clenched my teeth in anger. I think Noelle felt the same, but she didn't retort. It was hard to understand why he would demean our grandparents so much, and I knew trying to understand his reasoning would be futile. I'm worried about Grandma and Grandpa, but since he has done no harm to them, let's just wait and see a bit longer. On the ride back, we decided to keep silent. I really wanted to tell our grandparents everything right away and keep my brother and his girlfriend away from them. However, recalling the happy faces of our grandparents earlier made it hard to speak up immediately. After that, for a while there was no contact from him as before. Of course, I wouldn't contact him under any circumstances. I disliked even hearing his and his girlfriend's voices, let alone seeing their faces. Then, unexpectedly, an incident occurred. Hello, Daisy. I received a call from Grandma during work, her voice sounding anxious from the other end. Grandpa fell down and has to be hospitalized. Hospitalized? What happened? Grandpa had apparently fallen while riding his bicycle and hit his head. There was no life-threatening injury, but he needed to be hospitalized for examinations just to be safe. I'll finish up work quickly and come to the hospital as soon as I can. Then, Grandma's unexpected reply came. That's all right. Bart said he's off today and he'll visit to check on him. Bart is. It was out of character for my brother to voluntarily offer to visit. There must be an ulterior motive. Yes, I just talked to Bart on the phone about Grandpa, and he said he would come. He should be arriving soon. While I doubted that he would directly harm our grandparents, I couldn't shake off a sense of unease. I wanted to go back right away, but piles of unfinished work made it difficult to leave immediately. After talking with Grandma, I reached out to Noelle, but she was also in a situation where she couldn't immediately head to the hospital. After finishing work, by the time I arrived at the hospital, it was already getting dark, and Bart had completed his visit and returned to New York. I'm sorry I'm late, Grandpa. How are you feeling? Thank you for coming, Daisy. Sorry to worry you, but I'm doing fine, as you can see. As soon as I entered the hospital room, I checked on Grandpa's condition and breathed a sigh of relief to see him looking well. Where are Grandma and Noelle? I looked for my sister and Grandma, who should have arrived earlier. They just went out to buy some drinks. Didn't you see them? I see. I'll go check on them. Although I felt bad for leaving Grandpa right after arriving, I decided to go outside. Grandma and Noelle were deep in conversation in the hospital courtyard. When they noticed me, I waved at them, but they just waved back with somber expressions. I became worried that something was wrong. What's wrong with you two? You both look so gloomy. Grandpa seemed fine, though. It's good that Grandpa is fine, but actually we were just discussing something concerning Bart, Noelle replied. Grandma briefly explained what happened during my brother's visit. At first he seemed concerned for Grandpa and made small talk, but eventually he began asking detailed questions about insurance, the future of the company, and even inheritance. Grandpa is happy that Bart has grown up, but something about it bothers me. He kept asking if this hospitalization wasn't life-threatening. Hearing Grandma's words was shocking. I started to imagine unpleasant things and felt an urgent need to inform my grandparents about our concerns. I consulted with Noelle and decided to tell Grandma about the conversation we had with Bart and Holly while driving them to the station. Actually, Grandma, after finishing the story, I was convinced that Grandma had come to the same conclusion, and I informed Noelle of this. Could it really be for the money? Noelle's voice rose in shock, and she hurriedly looked around, but it seemed no one was nearby. Bart seems jealous that we grew up without any hardships. It's weird that he never came back before, but as soon as he heard Grandpa fall down, he rushed here. Maybe he thinks that by coming to greet us this time, he won't be suspected. That makes sense. Indeed, he kept saying things like I've worked hard on my own, unlike you, and leave Grandpa's company to me. So, you mean Bart is after the company and the inheritance? But making a good impression on Grandpa now won't work out, right? Grandma nodded emphatically as she listened to our conversation. I agree with you two. Also, this is the first time I've heard that Bart is running a company. There might be other things he's hiding too. She had only just learned of him supposedly running a company as well. I had assumed Grandma knew about it, but it seemed she was hearing it for the first time. It's getting more suspicious. Grandpa doesn't seem to be on guard at all, but what should we do? As a result of our discussion, we concluded that the best thing to do then was to prevent Bart from meeting Grandpa. Perhaps hinting that we know he's after the inheritance might make him give up. While it was pitiful to think of Grandpa dismissing his visiting grandson, it was a necessary measure. Indeed, the day's visit was likely calculated to ingratiate himself with Grandpa to secure a larger share of the inheritance. He now posed a potential threat to us. It feels somewhat wrong to keep Grandpa in the dark about this. At Noelle's words, both Grandma and I nodded solemnly. That night, following our discussion, Bart called Grandma. The three of us exchanged glances and switched the phone to speaker. I want to visit again tomorrow with Holly, he said. You don't need to visit again. I don't know what you're thinking, but even if something happens to Grandpa, there's no more money left for you. Though Grandma's words about having no money left felt slightly off, it seemed he understood. Grandma, why would you say that? I'm just coming to visit Grandpa. Listen, all siblings are equal. I've said that many times before. Grandma's calm voice contrasted sharply with his rising anger. What do you mean, equal? It seemed the word equal triggered something in him, and his voice grew harsher with irritation. Shut up. What's equal about it? I have a right to receive it. I won't let the past be forgotten. His shout was so loud that the phone's audio cracked. Grandma remained silent for a moment, her expression stern, her brows furrowed more deeply than ever in anger. She finally spoke quietly, "Do as you please," and then hung up the phone. Daisy, Noelle, thank you for today. Let's go to the hospital together tomorrow. Now, let's get some rest. Grandma's voice returned to its usual gentle tone. The next day, accompanied by Grandma and Noelle, we headed to the hospital, where we would hear some shocking news. A week had passed, and then we attended Grandpa's funeral. Just as the funeral was concluding, and we were taking a breath, unexpectedly, Bart and Holly showed up. The inheritance is all ours. I couldn't forgive him for not showing up at the funeral and glared at him sharply. Why are you giving me that look? He challenged. I remained unfazed by his provocation. You two have had a comfortable life without hardships, right? Even if Bart gets all the inheritance, it's less compared to the luxury you've had. Holly declared, her makeup as inappropriate and heavy as her words. My brother has a right to the inheritance. But it seems that was never enough for them. Enough. Grandpa never said anything like that, Grandma retorted. At that, my brother smirked as if he had won. Grandpa told me directly, his will is proof. We were shocked by his claim. A will. I had never heard from Grandpa about such a thing. We became suspicious that Bart might have forced Grandpa to write the will by some means. Then, Bart took out his smartphone and began to play an audio file. The inheritance. Goes to Bart. Everything to inherit. The company too. All to Bart. Grandpa's voice echoed through the silent venue. You may not want to believe it, but that's how it is. The old man's company is mine. You guys just take care of the old lady. While Grandma and Noelle were confused, I immediately recognized that the voice was fake. The audio was clearly edited, with several unnatural breaks, as if proving it was amateur work. Probably he used something recorded during a previous visit. Well, it's a decent attempt for an amateur, but I work at a video game development company. Dealing with audio editing on a daily basis, there's no way I couldn't detect such a crude manipulation. Our suspicions about Bart's intentions during his first visit to see Grandpa were correct. I'm not surprised he fabricated such a non-existent will. And unfortunately, what Bart did is a clear criminal act, and he has lost his inheritance rights at that moment. Unaware Bart wore a smug expression, but there was no point in continuing this farce any longer. That's enough. Hey, Grandpa. As I spoke and took the smartphone in hand, Grandpa suddenly appeared at the funeral hall. Huh? Grandpa. What? What's going on? Both Bart and Holly were clearly shaken and froze. About a week ago, the day after Bart called Grandma, we were informed of a shocking plan at the hospital. It was Grandma who told us about the strategy to pretend that Grandpa had passed away suddenly. The three of us, including Grandpa, hesitated for a while, but we agreed that this was the only way to calm Grandma's anger. The attendees were locals who cooperated and played their roles beautifully. We weren't sure if the two would actually show up, but it turned out Grandma was right. What is this supposed to mean? You think it's acceptable to deceive me, your own blood relative? Bart started shouting in anger, but Grandpa sternly reprimanded him. Silence. How can you, who tried to deceive your own family and monopolize the inheritance, say such things? I never made such a will, nor did I ever intend to. Taking advantage of Bart's momentary shock, Grandma also raised her voice. Even if we add up the money given to Daisy and Noelle, you have received far more from us. I told you there's no more money left. At that moment, an unexpected voice chimed in. What? What do you mean? It was Holly. You told me, unlike my sisters, I've lived without any financial help. Really? Did you say that, Bart? We've been sending him money since his student days. I won't let him forget how often he demanded more money. Grandpa interjected. I was unaware that Bart had been demanding money from our grandparents, but it seemed there were also significant lies and secrets he kept from Holly. Shut up. It's because you always demanded expensive things. I needed the money for that. Cornered, Bart became aggressive towards Holly as well. So you bought all the gifts with other people's money until now. You said they were from the profits of your successful company. You're satisfied as long as you get your gifts, aren't you? Our plan led to Holly discovering Bart's lies, and before we knew it, their argument had escalated. As Holly pressed him, more of Bart's lies came to light. As suspected, the company he claimed to run was also fictitious. In reality, he had quit his job at a company a long time ago, and his severance pay had vanished into gambling. When Bart ran out of money, he would beg our grandparents for more, then lie to Holly about securing a big contract, and spend it on gifts, meals, and trips. When life was tough, he would claim the company was struggling, and it seems Holly mostly covered the expenses. We were stunned on the spot to discover that Bart had lied and kept secrets even from his fiancée, Holly. It's pathetic, that poor attempt at an audio edit. Even I can tell it was edited. It turned out that Bart had created the fake will by himself. Shut up. What you've done is a crime. I won't be part of this. I can't stay with such a liar any longer. Let's break up, goodbye. After Holly declared their engagement over, she left the scene. Bart was completely deflated, but as he had brought it upon himself, I felt nothing for him. Bart, your parents left enough money for your college, considering your education. And I don't know what you misunderstood, but we haven't been spoiling Daisy and Noelle. The money we gave you and the living expenses for Daisy and Noelle, all of it, comes from your parents who left it equally for all their children. Could it be? Bart was taken aback, his face showing surprise. We, who were raised by our grandparents, had been told this many times. It felt like a heavy topic when we were children, which is why we never desired luxury and always appreciated our daily lives. The money we sent you, besides your tuition, came from our own pockets. We wanted to support our beloved grandson living far away, no matter the cost. Grandma continued. But you took advantage of that, quitting your job and deceiving even your girlfriend. That was wrong. I am saddened by it. Bart said nothing, his head still bowed. Bart, if you're really in trouble, you can ask us for help. Now take a moment to calm down and think things over properly. With Grandma's words behind him, Bart hurriedly left the venue. As Bart left, he muttered a curse under his breath. About a month later, he returned with Holly. We are truly sorry. I'm really sorry too, Holly added as soon as they entered the house, immediately starting to apologize with such intensity that it was overwhelming. Everyone eventually sat down around the dining table. 10 minutes passed, and the atmosphere remained tense. Feeling uncomfortable, Grandma finally asked, "What brings you here today?" Then they began to address the main topic. You know, I always thought Daly and Noelle were living a luxurious life. I truly believed I was the only one suffering. Bart explained. When he first moved to New York, Bart was balancing school and part-time jobs, often struggling with both money and time. Coming home exhausted late at night after school and work, I had to do chores like cleaning and laundry. Eventually, I grew to resent you, thinking you were living comfortably without any hardships. It was clear that moving back to his grandparents' house would have been economically easier, but having moved away by his own choice against his parents' wishes, it felt awkward to return. Gradually, he started asking his grandparents for money beyond the regular stipends. Once I got used to easy money, part-time jobs didn't last, and working seemed foolish. Soon, I was frequently asking for money, and being treated like a rich person by others felt good, Bart confessed. This continued into his adult life, and naturally, his jobs didn't last long. Meeting Holly during this time, he further lost the incentive to work. I also want to apologize. I'm truly sorry. It might sound like an excuse, but I was blinded by love for Bart. I got swept away by everything they said, Holly said. The two finished explaining and apologized sincerely again. Grandma listened quietly. I understand your feelings now. The funeral trick was a bit mean. I'm sorry for that. But let this be a turning point. From now on, please show us your sincerity through your actions, not just your words. Grandma showed a certain understanding of Bart's words and seemed to no longer be angry. I honestly still haven't sorted out my feelings, but I don't think that everything Bart said was a lie. Of course, the same goes for Holly's words. Meanwhile, Grandpa, although he didn't voice it, had a complex expression on his face. I wonder if he feels the same as I do. Well, it's kind of sudden, but feeling perhaps that he had received forgiveness from our grandparents, Bart suddenly became fidgety and uneasy, a side of him that was unlike his usual self, causing confusion for our grandparents. Grandpa, could you possibly employ me? As Bart showed his polite self again, Grandpa showed a slightly surprised expression, apparently not expecting the conversation to turn his way. You really need to get Grandpa's forgiveness for this whole situation, Noelle chimed in, causing everyone to look at Grandpa. Well, let's set a probationary period and see how it goes. Grandpa finally said. It was still too soon to fully trust everything Bart said. However, everyone seemed relieved that Grandpa did not refuse outright. By the way, Holly, you're wearing natural makeup today. different from usual. I ventured, taking advantage of the lighter atmosphere to ask about something that had caught my attention. Holly's makeup was very natural and suited her well. Yes, this is actually more my style. Bart prefers heavier makeup. That conversation led to a broader discussion about the changes Bart and Holly had undergone over the past month. After the staged funeral, Bart immediately told Holly everything and sincerely apologized. Seeing this side of Bart, Holly decided to give him another chance and chose to stay. It seemed Bart was deeply grateful that Holly had returned, as he hadn't expected her to give him another chance after his apology. By the way, what would you have done if we hadn't shown up at the funeral home? Bart asked. Grandma answered simply, "Of course we would have continued pretending until the memorial party." Grandma replied with a mischievous twinkle in her eye. Hey, you were planning to keep Grandpa dead that long?" Bart exclaimed in mock outrage. Laughter filled the living room. Bart, seeming as if a weight had been lifted, showed a bright smile, and Holly looked at him with a face full of happiness. Reflecting on the events that led to their reconciliation seems unbelievable, but now, bonded by a strong connection, they will surely overcome any challenges together in the future. After proving himself during the probationary period, Bart was officially employed at Grandpa's company, and he and Holly moved into the neighborhood. Grandpa, influenced by these events, began to take both the company and the future of the family more seriously, deciding to groom Bart as his successor. Since then, whenever our days off align, everyone gathers for meals or goes out shopping together. The previous conflicts have disappeared, and a harmonious atmosphere prevails. Seeing these happy moments, I sincerely hope that this peace will continue forever.